Hey everybody, Tim Anderson here, aka Renfill. Welcome back for the next episode of Tim's Tabletop Tips, where I dive into some of the things that I like to do to spice up campaigns based on my 25 plus some years. I'm old, who knows? Somewhere on those lines, ballpark figure. I currently DM a campaign over on the Weave and Void Twitch channel. It's twitch.tv/Weave and Void, where you can find our party of adventurers with Nathan Napalm, Simmerg, Sparrow, Bounty Code, my brother, my wife, and I playing through campaigns. We also have behind me the world map. My brother, my wife, and I are creating the world of the Weave and the Void. Our tabletop books are out in Q2 of 2022, and we will be live streaming those campaigns on our Twitch channel as well. It's a 5th edition tabletop setting, sourcebook, campaign modules, and such. We're also building a point click adventure game in the same world. There's a free demo you can download today, and we also have the book series, kind of like Dragonlance with chapter art and stuff. And those chapters will be published twice a month at our Patreon page. All that can be found over at patreon.com/Winding Hermits. You can also join our Discord. Links are down below if you want to know more. And don't forget to tune in live on Sunday nights. So let's dive into the tip section. Um, I'm a big fan of sort of spontaneity when it comes to any sort of campaign scenario. I don't like any sort of predefined notes or predefined plans keeping the party from doing fun things. So for me, role playing is always going to trump combat every single time. To give you a good example of this, you can go back and watch the origin adventure for when our current group of players first came together and were starting to prepare themselves. We were getting used to Fantasy Grounds. We were getting ready to jump into our first session to learn 5th edition, and so we were using the Lost Mine of Phandelver campaign to get used to that. But we did an origin session, and that origin session is over on the Weave and Void YouTube channel. And one of these scenarios was they were getting ready to go rescue this, I believe it was the niece of one of the local shop merchants. She had been captured by goblins. Now, the obvious solution as they got into the forest and encountered goblins would have been to just take these goblins out. They definitely had the capability of doing so, even though they're only level 1 characters. But through the description that I gave as they entered into this scenario, as we were playing, I got it in my mind, and it was literally a spur of the moment decision. They had basically attacked this group, and I believe the way it had worked is they had charmed one of the goblins. And during that scenario, I had the wheels were spinning, and I was like, okay, how am I gonna? Am I just gonna lead them straight to the camp or whatever the case may be? I was like, what if? I said, what if? And this is when I said to the party, as they're charming this goblin, they look at him and he's emaciated, and he's like, food, in broken common and in goblin tongue, food, you have food, and so they feed him. And that leads to this scenario where the goblin is now like their best friend because they gave him food and he's starving. So this leads to this scenario where the goblin agrees to take them to the camp in exchange for the party helping these goblins learn how to hunt and get food and everything else because they're literally starving to death. And as they get there, they uncover this story. And this is me remembering things. I could be off a little bit on some of the details, but as I recall, the party at this point uncovers the fact that these goblins had been forced out of their land and had to come down south to where they were currently at. And they had been raiding the local farms because they were so hungry, and come to find out that the girl hadn't actually been kidnapped per se. She's actually in the camp with the goblins, helping them and teaching them and trying to help them, learn how to hunt and gather and everything else. So then through role play, we uncover this scenario where they help the goblin, even though they did kill a few goblins in the beginning, unfortunate misunderstanding. They were able to patch that up and then go on about helping this goblin party learn how to hunt and fend for themselves and gather and so on and so forth. And I believe they may have even established a trade relationship with the locals in the town of Marin's Rest, and smoothed those things over with them. So to me, I'm always going to favor role play instead of combat. Now that's not to say that combat isn't fun. Combat can lead to some of the craziest things that happen, and they're some of the most memorable experiences a lot of people have in Dungeons and Dragons because it's when your characters get to do really cool shit, like jumping off the top of a tower and plunging two daggers into the back of a dragon, and while the party below is launching fireballs and magic missiles and shooting arrows, and one of the arrows, they get a crit roll on the 20, and the arrow goes into the eye of the dragon, and the dragon roars and crashes to the ground, and like Legolas, the rogue on the back tumbles off and somersaults and makes all of his dexterity checks, and lands with a flourish of his daggers and bows to the party. That kind of stuff can absolutely happen in combat scenarios. And it's amazing when it does, when the rolls are working in your favor. But the rolls don't always work in your favor. So you don't always get to have these epic combat encounters that work out exactly like that. But in a role playing scenario, um, good or bad, you don't always need rolls either, because you can often just use the role playing as a means of coming up with a different way to approach a story scenario without needing to rely on dice rolls or anything like that. Now, you can still obviously flavor things up a little bit with some, I like flavor rolls, which we've talked about in, I think, the first episode, but you can also use, your intimidation checks and your persuasion checks and all that good stuff. But oftentimes, a good role playing scenario, when you've got a party of players who aren't afraid to get into the minds of their characters and act and actually be that character, you can come up with some amazing scenarios that you might play for 3 hours and never have a single combat encounter. You might play 3 sessions and never have a single combat encounter. And I'm a big fan of those types of scenarios. And when I'm DMing campaigns and running any sort of campaign, I prefer story over combat every day of the week. And if you dive into, for example, if you watch the playtesting that we did here on my YouTube channel, back when Weave and Void was called Project Drammond, there's a playlist somewhere you can find. We did I think it was six episodes, 6 sessions with our playtesting group from Patreon, and we playtested the first campaign module from the Weave and the Void, which is called The Escape from Parthana. And in that campaign, it was heavily role play as opposed to combat. There were some intense combat scenarios, especially the night when the turned event happens and they have to get out of the tavern. But I think the first 3 sessions were very laid back, mostly role play. There were a couple of small combat scenarios, but it wasn't until the fourth session when the shit really hit the fan. And then sessions 4, 5, and 6 were very combat heavy because now we're dealing with all this stuff that's going down in the city, and now we've got to escape. We got to try to get out with our lives, and there's all this stuff happening. And it was at that point, I look at it kind of like the pacing of a movie or the pacing of a good book. You can have an introduction. There's something interesting something exciting that has to happen right at the beginning, and then you get into some storyline and some exposition, and then you put them right back into the action again, and then it's out of the frying pan into the fire, and then back out again. And so, if you pace that properly with role play, you can intersplice your role play moments with the combat scenarios, and you can very much have this up and down weave where you're constantly throwing the characters into the fire, then bringing them back with great role play, and then putting them back into the action again, and bringing them back and giving them a chance to breathe. I love role play. I'm always going to advocate for it. So hopefully that's a good tip for all of you. If you want to know more, don't forget to check out the rest of the videos in this playlist. And of course, don't forget to check out the next video when it comes live, which means you need to subscribe, hit the bell icon, all those good things so that you never miss an episode. And don't forget, if you want to know more about the world of the Weave and the Void, which we're building back here, check out the Patreon page, patreon.com/Winded Hermits, and hopefully we'll see you live on Sunday nights, 9 p.m. Central, over on the Weave and Void Twitch channel. Stay safe, everybody. Safe gaming. Until next time.